The Three Little Pigs, retold by Lucky. Once upon a time, there was an old mommy pig who lived with her three little piglets in a large, comfortable, old-fashioned farmyard. The eldest little pig was called Curly because he had such a curly tail. The second was called Tusker because he was always rooting around with his nose. And the third one's name was Porker because he knew exactly where he was going. Now Curly was a very dirty little pig. He loved nothing better than to play in the mud all day long. Tusker was quite an intelligent pig, but he was very greedy. As soon as the pigs got food, he would push his two brothers out of the way just to get to the best parts all for himself. Porker was a good and thoughtful little pig. His skin was always pink, and his manners were excellent. His mother used to say that he would be a prize pig when he grew up. The three little pigs lived happily with their mommy in the farmyard until the old mommy pig got really sick. She got weaker and weaker and weaker until it was very obvious that she was going to die. She called her three sons to her and said to them, "I am growing so weak and feeble that I know I shall not live long, and when I die, the farmer will give this house where we have lived happily for so long to a new family of pigs, and you won't have room here, my sons. You must leave this farmyard and go into the world and build new houses for yourselves there." So the three little pigs rubbed their snouts up against their mommy for the last time, and while they cried, they left the farmhouse to seek their fortunes in the cold world. Before long, Curly came across a stack of straw, and he decided to make a house out of it. He found a nice big patch of mud. Then he rolled the straw in the mud and built a house with 4 walls and a roof. It looked just like a mud pie, but Curly liked it that way. He curled up inside it and went to sleep. As for Tusker, he made his way to the nearest cabbage field. He collected a big bundle of sticks from a nearby wood and stacked them up to make his house. Then he lined the floor and the roof with the cabbage leaves and lay down to eat them in comfort. Meanwhile, Porker had gone farther than his brothers and found some men at work in a brickyard. He watched them load the newly baked bricks onto the wagons and take them away to build men's houses. In a corner of the yard was a pile of bricks which could not be used because they were chipped. Porker carefully chose the best of these and carried them off to build his own house. When he had finished, he had a nice solid little house just right for a prize pig. Now the old mommy pig used to tell her sons about the big bad wolf who lived in the woods and was always hungry. He liked nothing better than a dish of fat, juicy piglet for his supper. And sure enough, no sooner had Curly gone to sleep in his new house than the wolf came knocking at the door.
Little pig, let me come in,"
called the wolf. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin."
"Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in,"
growled the wolf, and he puffed, and he huffed, and in no time at all, Curly's house of straw had blown away in the wind. Curly himself managed to escape just in time and ran as fast as he could to Tusker's house to seek shelter there. The wolf, however, had seen where Curly went. Soon he appeared in the cabbage field and knocked at the door of Tusker's house.
Little pig, let me come in,"
he called. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin," squealed Tusker. "You're the big bad wolf, and I'll never let you in."
"Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in,"
snarled the wolf, and took a deep breath. He huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and soon the lighter sticks in Tusker's house began to blow away. Then the wolf gave a few more puffs and blew the whole place to pieces. By this time, the little pigs had realized that the wolf was bound to win and ran as fast as they could to their brother's home. Porker let them in and set about bolting and barring the windows and doors. He had just finished by the time the wolf reached the brick house and knocked on the door.
Little pig, let me come in, he called.
Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin! You're the big bad wolf!
Cried Porker.
Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in,
howled the wolf. He took in an enormous breath, and he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and when that didn't work, he dashed himself against the brick walls and tried to knock them down.
Go away!
Cried Porker.
Not till I've eaten you 3 little pigs for my dinner,
growled the wolf. But the house was so well built that at last the wolf had to give up and go home. He slunk away with his head between his shoulders the way wolves do. He could hear a lot of high-pitched giggling coming from Porker's brick house. Tee! Curly went, and ha! Tusker chimed in. Only Porker was thoughtful.
We haven't seen the last of that wolf yet,
he warned his 2 brothers. The following day, there was a knock at the door.
Who is there?
Cried Porker through the keyhole.
It's just the old man from the woods,
croaked the wolf, trying to disguise his voice.
There's a field of turnips over there going to waste. Come with me, and we'll dig them up for tomorrow's dinner.
I'll meet you out there in the morning when I've put my milk out to cool,
Porker replied. But instead, he told his brothers to milk the cow, while he himself set off early to the field. By the time the milk had been put out in the bowls to cool, Porker was safely back in the house with a sack full of turnips.
Little pig, are you ready?
Called the wolf.
I've gone there and come back earlier this morning,
Porker replied. The wolf went away angrily. Soon there was another knock at the door.
Who's there?
Asked Porker.
It's old Nellie, my dear,
cried the wolf.
There's a tree full of ripe apples on the hill over there. Come help me pick them. I'll come tomorrow morning when my bread's in the oven,
replied Porker. He got up extra early the next day and prepared the dough. But he did not wait for it to rise and told his brothers to put it in the oven for him. He set off briskly as the day was breaking to get the apples, for he hoped to be back home again before the wolf. But just as he had climbed onto the highest branch of the tree, he caught sight of the wolf below.
That looks juicy,
said the wolf. Porker wasn't sure whether the wolf was referring to the apples or to himself.
Yes, I'll throw you one,
he said, and he threw the apple up the hill so far that while the wolf was loping off to fetch it, he jumped down the tree and ran home. The wolf returned to his den exhausted. He realized that he needed to be a little smarter to catch the 3 little pigs now. For days he prowled around outside the house, waiting for Porker to come out. And sure enough, on market day, which was always Tuesday, Porker appeared carrying a basket on his arm and trotted off briskly to do his shopping. The wolf sat down and waited for him to return. A few hours later, Porker came back from the town with a basket full of shopping and a butter churn under his arm. As he reached the top of the hill above his house, he saw the wolf, grew frightened, and crawled inside the churn to hide. But as soon as Porker had got into the churn, it began to roll down the hill, bumping from rock to rock with the little pig squealing and squalling inside. The wolf, however, thought that this was a strange beast and he meant to eat him, but he got so terrified that he ran all the way home. That evening, the wolf snuck back to the pig's house, and he found that it was all locked up again. The only opening was the chimney for the smoke to escape. He worked hard to climb up to the roof, hoping to climb down the chimney. But the three little pigs, knowing that he wouldn't be satisfied until he had gobbled them all up, had made a plan. The three of them quickly made a rich stew with all the vegetables Porker had brought from the market. Then they stoked up the fire to make it bigger and hotter and set the pot of stew to boil. Up on the roof, the wolf's nose was twitching because of the smell of the delicious stew. He was imagining how delicious the three little pigs would taste in that stew. But as the wolf came sliding down the chimney, Porker took the lid off the pot, and the wolf fell straight into the boiling stew. And you know what? That was the end of the big bad wolf. The big bad wolf had ruined the pig's supper, but it was all worth it. After that, Tusker and Curly both built themselves new homes of brick next door to their brother's house. They were made of brick all right, but Curly insisted on lining his with mud, and Tusker had cabbage leaves for his bedding. The end.